Alleluia. Om Mani Padme Om. Allah
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. And today we're speaking with Zahid Ahmed. He's a peace educator, Deakin University. We've spoken with Zahid before, and in the meantime he's delivered a paper on peace education in Pakistan. And we'll discuss that later on. Zahid, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for the invitation and another opportunity. Yeah.
We've, just to set the scene a bit, just to get your background, you are obviously from Pakistan. You would have been born a Muslim.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think when we were talking last night, what's wrong with time here? Last time, you mentioned your father was actually a Sufi. That captured my imagination then. How did that fit together with Sufi and Pakistan, Islam? So
it's not difficult to understand that identity because Sufism is quite predominant in South Asia. It is clear from the number of shrines that are there, and he was also a disciple of one of the Sufi schools of thought, and he identified himself with that and also practiced that in his day-to-day life, which is important. That practicing that is, I think, more important, and keeping that culture alive, which is now the Sufi culture is under threat for quite some time from different terrorist groups attacking shrines in Pakistan, and a couple of shrine leaders from India who were visiting Pakistan. They were just kidnapped last week. They have disappeared. So there is a direct threat to this, in my opinion, this moderate version of religion and then the values that South Asia or the subcontinent used to have for a very, very long time.
So there's a reasonably large community of Sufis in Pakistan, is it?
Indeed, in the whole region, in fact, like from Afghanistan to Pakistan and also in India, even during the Mughal era, and then the subcontinent, kings like Akbar, they promoted Sufism and promoted in many ways. In fact, in those times, prominent Sufis used to be his advisors. In India, and that kept on growing. They had a lot of prominence in the Indian subcontinent at that time. Yeah.
And so you mentioned about the moderates being sort of under attack, and that would be why they're being attacked, because of their moderation of the fundamentalist Muslim drive. Would that be right?
Because they are seen by extremists as promoting something which is not Islamic.
Right.
Promoting something which is, let's say even simpler things like, more rights for minorities, respect for minorities, something that doesn't go very well with their extremist narrative that they wish to promote. And there have been, regular attacks on moderate voices in that part of the world, starting from attacks on, bloggers in Bangladesh, moderate policymakers in Pakistan, even governors have been shot and killed, and ministers, policymakers have been attacked.
Yeah, it's pretty serious. So here you are. You're raised in this household. What influence has that had on you in your life as a Muslim?
Massive influence, because I see myself benefiting a lot from that upbringing, and then making these, so many friends across the world, especially in India where I used to go. I never had any barrier, either mentally or physically, that sort of, stopped me from interacting with people of other faiths and living in their homes. I've lived with, Hindu families and then Christian families in India and across the world, living with people of different faiths and different cultures was never a problem from the very young age. And I actually attribute that to that upbringing that really had, massive positive impact, I would say, on my personality and also my career
Yes.
in peace education.
So it's carried on into peace education.
Indeed,
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah. Well, how's that? How did it set the foundation for that? What were the influences there?
So many influences. I think that because those values became a part of my personality, respecting people, listening to people, which is very important. If you don't listen to people, so-called other people, then you can never understand them. And if you don't understand them, you can never respect them to that level that you should respect. The amount of respect you give to people of your own ethnicity and a religion or nationality, because you have these invisible sort of walls created in your mind between you and the others that stop you, that I never had them. So as a 23-year-old, when I was selected to represent Pakistan at the World Youth Peace Summit in Thailand, where I interacted with the religious scholars from around the world, the religious leaders, and no problem whatsoever, because it was so easy for me to connect with everyone, with Buddhist monks and with Hindu leaders and with leaders of the Christian world and Jews as well. And I think that is very important. And then you have to go back to what happened in your upbringing, which is different from the upbringing of other many thousands of people, millions.
Yes, but it's a really vital point you're making, isn't it? To be able to remove that invisible mental barrier when something different arises, when the person you're talking to suddenly is a Sikh or is a Buddhist, and it doesn't conflict, but it's different to perhaps the Muslim faith that someone else might be raised in. And so when that wall comes up, who can listen to someone when they're listening through a wall like that? That's a vital thing, So you've come forward, all right. So you then emerge into a situation where peace education arises. Now, we're just about to get pretty close to the end of this segment, so I won't ask you the question, I'll set it for you for next time, is that what was it really at the root which caused you to say, I am going to enter into peace education? You put the context, but what was it that drove you to do that, which is really quite an important career that you've chosen?
Indeed.
I want to talk about that.
Indeed.
We're out of time for the moment, but we'll be back. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Zahid Ahmed. He's a peace educator. So, Zahid, we were talking about sort of how you got to the evolution of your capacity to communicate across a wider range of cultural and religious experience. And out of that, you chose to become a peace educator. Where did that come from? It must have been something offered, or did it arise in you unconsciously? How did it come?
I see my, life history or my career as an, step-by-step process, and significant opportunities that led to, me becoming a peace educator. So, 12, 13 years ago, I had received a grant from Dalai Lama's Foundation for Universal Responsibility on conducting a comparative analysis of history textbooks in India and Pakistan. So although both countries share a collective history, the problem with the way they teach it is that, it sort of enforces that stereotyping of the other, and they keep creating that enemy image in the minds of younger generations. And the idea was to do a comparative analysis of that, and based on the findings of that study, I was motivated to do peace education, and I wanted to, if through education you are enforcing that stereotyping, then education should be used as a tool to counter it. And with that desire, I started looking for academic programs and then peace education, and found one at the United Nations University for Peace in Costa Rica, far away from my home in Pakistan. In fact, I had to, point at the global map and tell my parents, where Costa Rica was when I was going there. But it takes, effort, new ideas take effort, and if you want to acquire new skills, you have to go out of your comfort zone, and I was very much willing to do that, to do a degree in peace education and then identify myself as a peace educationist.
Right. So there's a growth in peace education. When you started, how big was it? There was the university that you went to, United Nations thing. So how big was that? How many students would have been there?
That has a very interesting model, university. And then back in those days, it used to have in all the specialized programs around 12 to 14 students. And that model worked very well for me because I wanted to develop my own project and certain specialized skills, and it worked very well. But even back in those days, during 2005 and 6, when I was in Costa Rica, there were more and more universities offering programs in peace and conflict studies, and also with courses on peace education, although not like a special degree on peace education. But starting from Bradford University in the UK to Uppsala. In Sweden and George Mason University in the US, there has been a sudden rise. I can say that in the number of institutions offering peace education programs, and then you have at the global level you have United Nations institutions. One is UNESCO that sort of leads the way at the global level in promoting peace education, especially in preventing violent extremism, which is like a new project at UNESCO. And then there is an institution that works on children, UNICEF works. But mainly, especially since 9/11, there has been a sudden increase in not only in the amount of funding, but also linked to that, like in the number of organizations working on peace building and peace education around the world.
Right.
So especially in Pakistan, as I've also recorded in my publications, that a lot of international organizations now have offices in Pakistan and they work on peace education. So that in itself gives a very clear signal of the way this whole discipline or this field is developing or evolving.
Yes. And so does that I presume is reflected in the curriculum as the curriculum expanded for the peace education studies, from what did it look like to start with?
Especially in the case of peace education has had a varied degree of success in different countries. So in Sri Lanka now it is part of a formal curriculum. In Nepal it's on the way of becoming a part of the curricula there. In Pakistan that has not been the case as of now, but it's almost closing to that big success, becoming integrated into the curriculum there. But other than that, there are non-formal education programs, like offered at schools, offered in Islamic seminaries called madrasas in Pakistan. And there are a range of initiatives from, in different countries that have faced serious conflicts at the communal level, where groups are divided based on ethnicity, based on religion, or even in sectarian differences.
Well, a person who's qualified in peace education and got a diploma, degree, whatever it is, where would they expect to be employed? Who takes them up?
Numerous international organizations, many local non-governmental organizations, and now also public institutions. And soon after, for instance, my postgraduate degree from Costa Rica, I worked in a prominent German think tank, which is ranked amongst top 20 in the world, working on conflict transformation, and mainly my role involved creating different training programs for the civil society around conflict transformation.
So that really comes back to the point that you made at the start, and what the name of the discipline implies anyway, that education is one of the key tools to bringing about peace. Would that be a fair observation?
Indeed, because and it has emerged as a result of so much research that has been done on textbooks, including my research in the Indian and Pakistani context, and how education can be used also as a tool to counter those extremist narratives or extremist ideologies that are promoted through education, and also, for instance, textbooks and also other mediums.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to talk perhaps about that first report you did about the difference in the books between India and Pakistan. We're out of time for the moment. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Zahid Ahmed, a peace educator. Zahid, you mentioned one of the triggers which you entered you into the peace education arena was you doing a report which looked at the potential points of conflict between textbooks from India and Pakistan, historical, etc. There must have been some key points came out of that. Would you be able to iterate a few of those?
A lot of key points, but I would focus on both, like experiences during the field work, and which was both in India and Pakistan at schools in 3 cities of India and 3 cities of Pakistan. And mainly it was, the study moved beyond just mere analysis of historical distortions in history textbooks. And as I mentioned before, that history is the same, but the way it is interpreted is different on both sides, which is not particular to the case of India and Pakistan. There are several other examples that we can think of. But one of the key findings was that, that the way the history is taught in both countries, that enforces that enemy image among young minds in both countries, and many of them grow up to become policy makers, become bureaucrats, become diplomats, and then they have these these walls between them and the Indians, so to say, when they come across them, which is often the case in this very globalized world. And they have like same problem, which is not the case with people who are able to overcome those barriers and make very good friends. And in Australia, I've seen Indians and Pakistanis, getting along very well, and they are very good friends, many of them. But on the research, one of the key findings was that India and Pakistan, they were divided on the basis of religion, and Pakistan was created, let's say, from the point of view of the way history is taught in Pakistan, and also in India it's called two-nation theory. And the essence of two-nation theory was that Muslims' culture was different from the culture of Hindus, and they should live in a separate homeland. When the British Empire was actually willing to leave the Indian subcontinent. And when I was interviewing a teacher in India, and I asked her, when you teach this part of history, do you ever face any problem? And she said yes, because many times Hindu students, they come and ask me that why these Muslims are still living in India if Pakistan was created for them. So there are obvious implications of that on both sides, when certain parts of the history are taught in a very strange manner, I would say, that serves your own national interests, because you want to create that enemy image that serves your, let's say, Hindu nationalist agenda on one side, and the Islamic Republic on the other side in Pakistan.
Well, it's as they say, history belongs to the victor in conflicts. So this is another example of it. So, so you did that report. Have you seen a change in the way in which those books have been presented or written or taught?
There has been actually a lot of awareness, I would say, on both sides in making these curricular reforms and transforming or changing these history textbooks. And because Pakistan is home to not a very large, but a sizable Hindu population as well, and sizable Christian population which is non-Muslim. And India is home to the 3rd biggest Muslim population. So that in itself, is enough to justify changes in the education system and other policies just to make sure that these countries don't end up in big, communal riots. And there are so many examples in, let's say, Gujarat and India of, clashes between Hindus and Muslims, and the destruction of a mosque in Babri Mosque in India, and frequent attacks on Hindus and forced conversions of Hindus in Pakistan.
Yeah.
But the state is now taking much more interest in making not only legal reforms but also educational reforms to be able to address these issues. So I see now a political will, but of course a lot of effort is needed, like beyond these, tokenistic measures.
Yeah, it's true. So just continuing with that Indian-Pakistani interface there, what would be the population of peace educators on both sides in relation to that? What's the continuing role of peace educators as you envisage it to be?
I think their role is very important. At the moment, it's a very small group, I would say, on both sides. But their initiatives are important. They are regularly, or they used to actually regularly engaged in cross-border dialogues and exchanges of educators from both sides interacting with each other and discussing these very issues that we are talking about. But in recent times, with this rise of Hindu nationalism in India, and the way relations between both countries have gone down, there's very little hope now, at least in the present circumstances, that people would be able to have that much level of exchange that used to happen, let's say prior to Narendra Modi coming into power on one side and in India. So it's important for both governments to understand that people-to-people contacts are important. The contacts between or exchanges between intellectuals are very important, and peace educators are very important, because ultimately, if they resolve their issues, it is in the benefit of both countries. Countries that are home to a large number of poor people.
Yes.
So if they cut short on, let's say, defense budgets by resolving their own disputes, because the only reason they invest more in defense is because they have these insecurities, which are also reinforced by the kind of textbooks they teach.
Yes, and of course behind all of that are the political imperatives. That seems to be the one constant, is power and politics are exercised in the same way everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter about the culture or the religion or the language.
Indeed.
It's the same. Now, you will come back next week. I'm making that assumption. And I look forward to speaking about your special report on peace education in Pakistan, which you delivered at the United States Institute of Peace in 2017. Or published in 2017. So that's fine. We're happy to do that, because I look forward to that. We'll be able to expound further.
It will be a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Zahid. You've been watching Harmony and Diversity. We'll be back next week, and we will speak with Zahid Ahmed about peace. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu